Okay, so welcome guys to another episode of Drill Through the PS. Today it's going to be a little bit different. We've got Ish helping us out, and we've got Sana who's applying for dentistry, and we're going to be going through her personal statements. So stay tuned for all of it as we see how we can improve on her personal statement at the moment. So we've got Ish from the dental portal. Ish, what are you up to at the moment in terms of working with students?
Yeah, so at the moment we're currently, I think the bulk of our UCAT preparation is kind of like everyone's done like their first few weeks of UCAT preparation. A lot of students are now coming in with advice regarding personal statement. And it's all about really just tailoring everyone's like initial couple of drafts. Really cutting rid of everything that they don't need or that they think they need, and really like refining stuff a bit more. Because I think when it comes to this time going into September, it's really all just focusing on the personal statement as soon as people start finishing their UCAT.
Yeah. And Sana, how have you found it working on the personal statement?
I found it quite good because I wrote a list out of all of the stuff that I knew I wanted to include. So I kind of like sectioned each paragraph out and just started drafting it. So I thought it was quite good. Yeah.
All right. Any challenges that you experienced?
Trying to like get it all in. Honestly, it's quite limited with what you can actually write. So I had quite a bit to write, and so I had to cut quite a few things out.
Okay. All right. So let's see how you did. What draft is this? Do you know?
This is the second one.
Second draft. Okay. All right. Let's see how it went. So if you just read the first paragraph, and then we'll get into it.
So, growing up bilingually, being fascinated in human anatomy, and having an artistic flair, it became evident to me that dentistry as a profession massively interested me. To me, when defining dentistry, it's a profession which incorporates one's artistic capabilities as well as scientific knowledge in order to diagnose, educate, and ameliorate patients. However, it all centers on cooperating with the team, solving problems, and providing empathy. Through my heightened interests, I saw online opportunities to fulfill my aspirations.
Okay. Any initial thoughts there, Ish?
Yeah, so just the first, I quite like the first sentence. And you can see the relevance that obviously human anatomy and having an artistic flair has with dentistry. What are you trying to get across with bilingually?
Like my cooperation skills and like just being able to like have another skill.
Okay, yeah. The only thing I would say with that is I think it's quite a useful skill to have, but I would try to make it a bit more evident that you're referring to, because I think everyone would kind of know, okay, she's acting like she's good at communication here, but it doesn't quite tie in with the other two things that you mentioned there, because they're quite like key specific dentistry related things. Does that make sense? So your artistic flair, your human anatomy. Okay, yeah, I know she's talking about dentistry. Growing up bilingually, but we've not been told by growing up bilingually, I've been able to like communicate with like a wider range of people. I think because it's quite a useful thing to have, and it's something that'll make you stand out. But I would perhaps put it in or rearrange the way you're going to word it, and maybe put it in later on in the personal statement. But instead, talk about how you've been able to use the fact that you are bilingual to show that you've been able to develop your communication skills, etc. Especially when it's a case where you're kind of bilingual by birth, if that makes sense. Is that the case for you? Because like it's the case with me, for instance. Like I'm bilingual by birth, and therefore I don't think it's really like developed me that much in terms of communication skills, because it's what I am. But if I was to then, for instance, learn a couple more languages throughout my life, and then I'll be multilingual, and then that shows like I've actually like done something to get communication. Whereas with people like us, where we're like default bilingual, I think we just need to like hone in more on why that's developed you in order to be a dentist. Because the other two bits in that sentence are really good, because it really shows that you know that dentistry requires having like an artistic flair and relevance with the human anatomy. I think that's a really good start. So potentially maybe like alter the way you're going to use bilingual, or if you're going to leave it in there, I would just make it a bit more obvious what you're trying to get across.
Okay.
But yeah, it became evident to me that dentistry as a profession massively interested me. I'd maybe get rid of massively. I feel like it sounds a bit less professional, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much need for it, especially if you're struggling with characters as well. It became evident to me that dentistry profession interested me alone will be more than, I don't think the massively here is has added anything towards how much I think you want to be a dentist. If that makes sense. Okay. So in that situation, massively, I'd find a synonym for massively, which is a bit more in keeping with the rest of, because the rest of your introduction reads really well. I would maybe have something else that just, it stays in touch with the same professional way you've gone about writing the rest of it. Or if you're struggling, I would just get rid of it because it doesn't add in. I know that you really want to do dentistry, you're applying for dentistry, like that's obvious to me anyway. So it's not really adding anything in that sense if you're struggling to replace it. Artistic abilities as well as scientific knowledge, diagnose, educate. I really like this because it shows that I think having educate here is really, really good actually, because there's this main key focus on dentistry at the moment, which is like prevention is better than cure, and that's prevention is via education. So I think it's really good that you've shown admissions tutors here that that there's more to dentistry than just drilling and filling. It's like the holistic patient care. So I really, really like that sentence. Cooperating teams, so yeah, through my height and interest. Yeah, I think the rest of your introduction is actually really good. You've kind of shown the main things we always look for with the personal statement is show that you have some knowledge or grasp of the career and the profession, and kind of some interest in the profession. The only thing I would say maybe here is I always ask students or advise students to put the personal in personal statement. And maybe we've not quite got that with that introduction, if that makes sense. It's kind of this, if I read that introduction, I'm not saying, okay, what's made Sana here, what's made her, what's her personal desire here to study dentistry? Because it's quite like, although it's written very well and very formal, it's quite like a generalized approach to why somebody would do dentistry, if that makes sense. It's almost like a textbook introduction to why you do dentistry, because you've ticked off all the criteria for profession, etc., etc. But maybe, and then that's what maybe the first sentence always comes into it. I think maybe put a bit of your personal flair into, like, why did you want to do dentistry? Like, ask yourself that question, because if they don't question you that whilst reading the personal statement, they'll question you that whilst doing your interviews, especially somewhere like Newcastle where it's a panel interview and they have the personal statement in front of you. So I would say have a look at that introduction again. I'd say 80% of it is really good and you kind of hit the markers, but really think about how you can make it more personal, because at the moment it's reading like a very good textbook personal statement, and sometimes you want it to be a bit less textbook, a bit less like perfect, if that makes sense, but more you.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with what you're saying there. So Sana, what I would say, just before we move on to the next paragraph, is the fact that, like Ish was saying, we want to find out more about you as an individual. So maybe it was the fact that growing up bilingually, you were able to communicate between two people, be the middle person, and you saw how much that resolved a certain issue or helped things, and then you also saw the importance of communication within a dental setting, and you could see yourself being that dentist. So we want to know more about yourself. Why is growing up bilingually stirred up that passion and interest for dentistry? And I think when you start putting more of you in that, I think it'll really make it a strong and unique personal statement intro.
With your personal statement, think you need to have like a USP. You need to have a unique selling points. And you're in this introduction, for example, if I read through that, the one thing that's going to distinguish you from anyone else who's writing in generalized personal statement is the fact that you're bilingual here, isn't it? Everything else is kind of just describing dentistry, and that's what anyone else can put there. But the only bit in that personal statement at the start that's not just specific to dentistry is bilingually, isn't it? So maybe that's going to be, maybe if you want to add your personal touch, that's what you want to expand upon. A bit like how Arnold said, if that makes sense.
All right, let's get through a bit more, because I think we might run out of time if we spend that long on each part. All right, so let's go for the second paragraph.
After attending a Zoom call with a dentist, it became more apparent to me that teamwork was a key aspect within the demanding dental environment, alongside maintaining confidentiality and professionalism. A specific case was mentioned about a very anxious patient where the dentist had to adapt to the difficult situation and tend to the patient's needs by talking through what they were intending to do and making it seem like the patient was in control. This highlighted the importance of communicating with the rest of the dental team and educating the patient on their diagnosis, treatment, and preventative care.
So in this section, we're starting to delve into work experience.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah. Okay, Ish, initial thoughts?
So I really like the fact that you put this after attending a Zoom call with a dentist, because initially that's just already shown an admissions tutor who's going to be reading through loads and loads of COVID-19 dentistry personal statements. And he's going to be thinking, loads of people will be like, due to COVID-19, I was unable to do X, Y, Z. But initially you just said, okay, look, forget COVID-19, that's happened, but I've done something now to try my best to overcome that. So I really like that. I think you've fallen into a bit of the trap that I think everyone, that I did myself, and I think every person I've read does, when talking about work experience or talking about a dentist experience, is that you describe the treatment or the process more so than what you've taken from it, or in this case where you have actually, you've shown that you've taken the importance of communicating, etc. But you know, this second sentence where a specific case, that sentence, I think we can really just condense that a bit, because you have to ask yourself with every sentence in the personal statement, is this enhancing my application as a dental student? Is this making me a better candidate? If you read that sentence on its own, it's probably not. It's showing that you've gained something from that Zoom call, which is really good. And then your sentence after that is more important, arguably. And this is the thing that I'd like to hone in a lot with people talking about work experience, etc. Is this the third sentence, the last sentence here, where you've kind of shown what you've taken away from that Zoom call, it adds a lot more value to you as a dental applicant than the sentence previous to it. Because all you're doing there is just describing, really, aren't you? And anyone can describe. Any dental student can describe what they see, but not many dental students or prospective dental students can take something away from what they've seen. So I really like the fact that you've gone into talking about the last bit, because you've talked about communicating, dental team, education, etc. But like Gez, you're struggling with your word count characters. So I would just try to condense that second sentence a bit. There's like, talk about an anxious patient, yep, and then you don't really need to like go into like the nitty gritty of like what the dentist is doing as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'd add to that is the fact that I want to know more about you. So you've talked about this opportunity to get extra work experience on this Zoom call. You've talked about this case that was mentioned about an anxious patient, how there was this dentist adapting to the situation and tending to the patient, how it highlighted the importance of communicating with the dental team. But how does that then make you, Sana, suitable? So we now need to link it to, okay, but what makes Sana suitable to fulfill, you know, the role that she's described a dentist does? Yeah. And I don't know that at the moment. So you always need to draw us back to, this is what I saw, this is what I reflected on, this is why I'm the person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that thing that I keep saying, would drill into your head, is just think about what's it called. It's called a personal statement. So like, if you're going to miss out the first bit, you've got the statement. that's just the text. You focus on the personal bit, because that's thousands of people apply for dentistry, and you want to know why someone's going to pick you and not somebody else.
Okay, so would it be relevant, because I mentioned like educating patients, I like tutored some school children, would it be like relevant to mention that there, or is that not really the right place?
I would potentially put that later on in your extracurricular work, because it's dentistry related but not dentistry related.
No.
Yeah, I would. So I think when you structure it, go like introduction, work experience, say like your A levels, whatever, and then extracurriculars, and then kind of just shove it into there a bit. Because I did something very similar to you. I tutored GCSE students and 11 plus students, And I kind of just snuck that into the extracurricular sense a bit.
Yeah. Let's read the next one.
I undertook a 6-week online dentistry course and a 5-day work experience course. During this work experience set up by Plymouth University, we were presented with a case about gum disease, which we had to present. This helped me to develop my analytical and research skills, which are necessary as a dental student and throughout the career. I attended the Operating Theatre Live, which is a workshop surrounding dissection, and a Medical Mavericks Day, which introduced us to many medical technologies. Additionally, by reading articles and completing an EPQ on the ethics of cosmetic dentistry, it all heightened my interest and allowed me to gain an insightful knowledge in specific fields.
Yeah, the pattern is starting to develop there, where we're really missing out on you and what makes you suitable. So it's great that you've had all these experiences, and it looks like you have been very proactive. That's very clear in this personal statement. But let's say the Plymouth University experience, you said it helped to develop your analytical and research skills, which are necessary as a dental student and throughout the career. I think that's okay. You attended the Operating Theatre Live, provided by Medical Mavericks, which introduced you to medical technologies. So maybe that becomes a bit generic now. Maybe talk about one of the medical technologies and reflect on that. And that will tell us that you actually got a lot out of it. And again, it's enhancing your position as a future dentist. Reading articles, I don't know what you think, Ish. Do you think it would be better to actually mention the journals or the articles?
Yeah, so I think I think the first thing I get from this paragraph is amazing. You've been very, very proactive, and compared to a lot of other personal statements I've read, you've actually done a lot.
Yeah.
So really well done for that. And you, like Arnold said, you start off well. So the Plymouth University, amazing. Develop my analytical skills. So okay, already I know that you've taken something away from that. You've taken the analytical skills, research skills, etc. And then I think as the paragraph continues, we begin to get a bit lazy, and it starts with many medical technologies. A very generalized statement, isn't it? It's a bit like, okay, I'm just going to shove that in there. It fills the gap. And then you continue that additionally by reading articles. What does that mean? And completely. With articles, I think it's one of them. If you say that, and we'll go into this in the second part of the video with interview questions, I would, as an admission tutor, pick up on that and be like, okay, so what have you been reading? Because a lot of these articles are they're not very lay friendly, especially to somebody who's just applying, like has got any knowledge of dentistry. In the same way, like when I was applying dentistry, I didn't have a clue really about the nitty gritty technical elements of dentistry. So when you do name drop articles, I think if you have read the articles honestly, then and you've got an actual interest in it, by all means include them, because then you can elaborate on them at interview. But if you're just putting it in there in the sake of making it pretty or to fill a space, then I would avoid it, because it doesn't really add much. And then if questioned at interview, you'll actually end up looking a bit disingenuous, really.
I only really put it in there because it kind of linked to my EPQ, because I use mostly articles for my. So should I just completely take that out and just use?
What I would do, I think, by saying that you've done an EPQ, I already know that you've read articles to do it. I already know you've done all this background reading, and because you've not mentioned like a specific article or anything here, I would just and this will save you a lot of characters and words as well. I would just do like completion of my EPQ on the ethics of cosmetic dentistry, heightened my blah 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 blah. So already we've got rid of like 5 words, another 50 characters, whatever. We've got rid of the chance of somebody questioning you at interview about articles, but they definitely might question you about EPQ, and that's when you can talk about the articles. Does that make sense? Because there's only so much you can put in a personal statement. You can't say I read 20 articles for my EPQ. But the fact that you said you've done an EPQ, I already know, and everyone will know that you've obviously done some research to do that EPQ, if that makes sense. So you've kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone by putting the EPQ there. So yeah, I'd probably just get rid of it, because it's a very generalized statement anyway.
Okay.
But as a second draft, I'd say it's reading quite well. I don't think my second draft read that well. So we're doing well. Okay, let's go to the next part.
Through volunteering as a ward buddy at a hospital, I developed my empathetic and communicational skills by speaking to recovering stroke patients of different circumstances, even ones which were fairly unresponsive. This reinforced the importance of compassion and communication regardless of one's condition. The significant relationship I as a volunteer had built up with the patients on the ward can be reflected within the dental environment as the dentist builds a good rapport with their own patients. During COVID-19, I've also helped my elderly neighbours by shopping for them weekly or taking their dogs on walks.
Okay, I really like this paragraph actually, and I'll tell you why I really like it. It's because you've now, you know how we talked about with the work experience paragraph previously, how you kind of just describe what you've seen and stuff, but you're not showing what you've taken away from it and not showing the personal element to it. Here you've done the complete opposite, and this is kind of the structure that you want your entire personal statement to do, is where you state what you've done, you show what skills or whatever you've taken away from it, and then you give either the personal relevance or the relevance to dentistry. And you've done that perfectly here with the first sentence. So you've done your act is the ward buddy. So the point is the ward buddy, and then you've shown the skills, which is empathetic, communication, etc. And then you've done the relevance to dentistry, which you go on later, which is building rapport, etc. with patients. And it's that sort of structure that we want to be consistent throughout. And what I like about this is the last sentence shows some humility and shows you're not a robot. Because throughout this, you've been dropping some really good courses that you've done, etc., etc. But this is quite a basic thing, like shopping weekly, taking someone for dog. But I quite like the fact that you've put this in. I don't know, some people might have different views to this, but I quite like it because it shows that you're not just doing this to people please and name drop, but it's kind of a human element to your personal statement. That's what's making your personal statement personal. So can you see how like we've gone away from this whole robotic, I did XYZ things that everyone else will have, and now you're making it a bit more personal. Like, do you know what this girl's done? She's actually genuinely done these things to help people, rather than have a very generic personal statement.
Yeah, no, I really like this paragraph. I was just thinking maybe it depends on the word count, but maybe you could talk about a specific instance of what you did with one of the stroke patients that displayed some of these skills that you're saying you have, maybe. But again, you'll be tight on words. I really like this part of the personal statement. I think it shows that you're genuinely a caring person who doesn't really do this just for, tick box exercise. I mean, the range of things that you've done there. Yeah, there's not much I would add to what Isha said.
I think to help you with the word count and cut down, after the stroke patients, where you put even ones which are fairly unresponsive, I think if you're struggling for words, I'd get rid. Because, like I said, once again, read it. Is it adding to my personal statement? Not really. Like you cut it. The bulk of it is at the start of that sentence, isn't it? Where you speak to these stroke patients, developing empathy, communication. This bit at the end, it's not really adding anything. Like, even though fairly responsive, you can go into, like, if you get asked at interview about your experience doing stroke patients, you're like, do you know what? Some of them are actually really unresponsive, and therefore I had to, develop my communication skills even further and use body language, etc., etc. And that's when you can delve into it a bit, because it gives you room to move a bit further, if that makes sense. It's a bit like with the articles and the EPQ bit here. You've kind of killed two birds with one stone by talking about the stroke patients, showing the empathy, communication, and this fairly unresponsive bit. It's not really adding much value to that sentence. So I would probably get rid of it and use them characters and words a bit more usefully. And it's the third sentence. Think of the structure you've got there and try to keep that consistent throughout, because it's really good.
This one here.
So it shows the action you've done, which is volunteer, and then you just flipped it to, how has this non-dentistry thing just made me a better dental student or dental applicant? And you can see how you've taken something away from something which is completely not dentistry related, and taken away the transferable skills and now shown that, you know, I need these skills as a dentist. And that's really paramount. That's really important. That's what admissions tutors are looking for.
That I would say is probably the key sentence in the paragraph.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It ties everything together. It's when you bring everything back to dentistry or bring everything back to you, that's your link to finish off that little structure.
Okay, so let's just try and get through this in the next 10 minutes. So if you read the next two paragraphs for us.
I've been a qualified lifeguard for 2 years now and enjoy lifeguard at my local pool. Acting fast and effectively is a skill which must be upheld by a lifeguard, as well as maintaining confidence and composure in such a pressurising environment. These skills can also be shown as a dentist, as one patient may need emergency treatment that would have to be done correctly and efficiently. Being lead navigator of 35, 45, 55 mod 10 tours and runs DOV demonstrates my skills as a team leader where I'm not afraid to take control. Also, adapting to tricky circumstances and cooperating with a team are all fundamental skills which needed in a dental environment. Within my goal DOV, I'm hoping to complete my residential at a local school which cares for pupils with numerous learning and communication difficulties. I hope to become more aware of tricky circumstances and the needs of such children by understanding how I can help. Furthermore, being head of house and part of the head girl team in my school all portrays my skills as a leader.
Yeah. That paragraph about you being a qualified lifeguard, I like how you've linked it to the situation of providing emergency treatment. I don't know, maybe you experienced or actually saw a dentist sorting out an emergency appointment. Did you ever observe that at all?
I haven't, no.
Okay, because if you had, it would have been a perfect place for you to talk about that experience. But I still like how you've linked lifeguard to dentistry in this part here. What do you think, Ish?
Yeah, I think what with this, the lifeguard paragraph, I think we can condense this a bit more and make it a bit tighter. So I would put, so having been a qualified lifeguard for 2 years, get rid of the enjoyed lifeguarding at my local pool, because I'm assuming you do that anyway because you're a qualified lifeguard for 2 years. Does that make sense? You know, it's just unnecessary words for no reason. So having been a qualified lifeguard for 2 years, I've developed skills in acting quickly and efficiently, as well as maintaining confidence and composure in pressurized environments. You know, so you've got rid of the enjoy lifeguarding at my local school bit, because you already kind of mentioned that by having been a qualified lifeguard. If you hated it, you wouldn't be doing it. So you've got that. Is a skill which must be upheld as a lifeguard. Well, you're talking about yourself being a lifeguard, so I'm assuming these are skills that are upheld by lifeguards, so get rid of that as well. So already you've got rid of like a fair few words and a lot of characters here. So I would condense it to something like this. Having been a qualified lifeguard for 2 years, I've developed skills in acting efficiently and quickly, as well as maintaining confidence and composure in pressurized environments. Or even get rid of confidence, as well as by maintaining composure in pressurized environments. Okay, so already we've just completely halved that sentence, but I've read that and I've got the same message that I would have if I read the full thing that you put down.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of just cutting through the crap a bit, and kind of just putting in what you want them to do, because the extracurricular bit, a lot of people fall into the trap. It goes two ways. You fall into the trap of either just listing loads of stuff and not explaining, which is what most people do, or people only focus on a couple of things and just go into a lot of detail in it without taking anything away. And you want to find it in between. Should we go into the next paragraph?
Yep.
Yeah. So here, once again, I think we can cut a lot of the stuff that you don't really need out. Is there any need to have 35, 45, 55 miles? No. Literally no need, is there? There's just no, get rid of it. Just like summarize that all into one thing. I wouldn't split Duke of Edinburgh into bronze and gold. Just keep it at DOV.
Okay.
Keep it as DOV, and then if you get asked on that, you'll be able to say, I did bronze, silver, and gold, blah blah blah. Or just keep it at gold DOV, because to do gold and British, you have to do silver anyway. Does that make sense? Yeah. So either just say you did gold DOV and get rid of bronze, or just summarize the DOV. I don't think they care that much what level of Duke of Edinburgh you did. Really, it's more what you've taken away from it. Fundamental skills, yeah. Yes, so the goal DV bit here, I would find a way to generalize Duke of Edinburgh here. It'll save you a lot of words. It'll cut the faff. And clear visual cares for people. I hope to become more aware of tricky sections and the needs of such employees and how I can help them. What do you mean by that sentence?
Like being aware of like tricky. I don't really know how to explain it. Just how to like cope with like tricky patients and just something that you're like not aware of.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I kind of know what angle you're going to go, but I think I would look at that sentence, highlight it, and restructure it a bit. Like make it obvious that you want to know, you want to develop your skills in dealing with, isn't it? Whereas you're not quite getting it. I think I'll just restructure that a bit.
Yeah. So what I'm getting is that you're trying to say that there are situations in dentistry where the circumstance is not straightforward. You know, maybe there's a time pressure. Maybe you've got an autistic or a very anxious patient. You know, it's not straightforward to deal with the situation, but because of the dentist's leadership qualities, they're able to diffuse the situation. Is that sort of what you're trying to get to? Yeah. So I'll probably talk about maybe an experience you observed or something you heard a dentist talk about, and then relate it back to the leadership qualities you clearly have.
Okay.
And then with the last sentence, could you generalize a bit, maybe head of house and part of the head girl team, or maybe pick which one sounds best to you, or which one is a bit you did more in as a role?
Okay.
But I think it will just cut the faff a bit and just like generalize one thing. Maybe if you just put I was part of the head girl team, and then you can go into talk about, I was also part of the head of house, etc. Maybe just choose which one of them two you really want to put and which one you want to talk about.
Okay.
But so far, what I'm seeing is you've got all the key ingredients,
absolutely.
To actually make a very strong personal statement. Okay. Let's read the last two, and then we'll summarize everything.
Keen netball player and playing weekly competitions with my club, as well as attending regional competitions with my school. I played piano for 10 years and still enjoy playing it. Such extracurricular activities have improved my dexterity and hand-eye coordination. I'm a hard-working, enthusiastic and bubbly student with a desire to learn. A dentist must be diligent, dexterous and patient. Therefore, I believe I'm highly suited to this course and excited to embark on any new challenges thrown at me.
Yeah.
Ish?
Yeah, so I'm keen at playing weekly competition club as well as, so that shows me. So when I was writing my personal statement, and the thing that I advise is when people talk about extracurricular activities like playing for clubs and stuff like that at school, you're showing obviously the leadership teamwork stuff, but you're also showing that you can do more than just study, and maybe put that in that you're good with time management. Get rid of the still enjoy playing the piano bit, because I don't know what that's adding really, but I'd put the second and third sentence into one. So playing piano for 10 years has developed my manual dexterity as well as my hand-eye coordination, and just kind of condense. I would mix the second and third sentence into one, because the second sentence on its own, apart from the piano bit, adds nothing. They're still enjoying playing it, adds nothing to the sentence. But if you put them both together, I think it'll flow a lot nicer as well. It'll read a lot nicer. I like the conclusions. The conclusion very to the point. Maybe choose a different word for bubbly. I'm not sure what your thoughts on this are, Arnold.
I would use a different word. Yeah,
because I think it's not in theme with the way the rest of your personal statement is written. The rest of it very professional, very like prim and proper, and then bubbly just stands out a bit. Apart from that, diligent, I like that it's a very clear, concise conclusion. You're not adding anything that we've not previously read before. And that's the main thing with the conclusion. I don't want to learn new stuff about you in the conclusion. I want a summary of you in the conclusion. And that's exactly what I've got with that conclusion. So As
a second draft, I'm impressed by what you've managed to put down and how you've managed to put it. What I like to look for is, are you showing a motivation, a desire to want to do dentistry? And I think you definitely are with how proactive you've been with the virtual work experiences with Plymouth University. That's all showing that you are motivated. Have you explored dentistry? Yes, you have, the work experiences. And are you suitable as a future dentist? Are you showing an empathetic side to you, a caring side to you? And I think the one paragraph that really stood out to me was this one here, which showed me that you do have those skills to make for a good dentist. So those are the three things I'm looking for when I'm looking at a personal statement. I think as you go through it and start to trim down on the words, your sentences will naturally grow stronger, and it'll be more potent as a personal statement. I think there are a lot of instances where you're probably saying things which don't need to be said, or by rearranging it how Ish was suggesting, you're going to be saying the same things plus some more with fewer words. Yeah, Ish, how would you summarize?
Yeah, I think as a second draft is one of the better second drafts I've read. It's really good in the sense that you've been so proactive, and that's so evident throughout. And that's really going to stand you strongly when competing with applicants who've potentially done less or have done a similar amount but have talked about it less. The key thing that I want to talk about here is we mentioned one of the Dental Portal blogs on how to structure your personal statement. It's called a PER structure, point evidence reflection, or point evidence relevance. And you've done that briefly in parts where we've picked up on, where you give the point, you give the evidence for it, or you talk about like the skill you've taken away from it, and you reflect on it to do with how this has improved you as a person, or how it's made you more applicable for dentistry. But it's making that consistent throughout the whole personal statement and getting into the habit of whenever you do drop a point or drop an experience, following it up with evidence of what you've taken away from it, and then how this personally reflects you being a dentist. I think what we talked about at the start, making your personal statement a bit more personal, I think it gets better as we go down into like your actual personal experiences.
I agree.
But at the start of it, I think it does sound a bit textbook, if that makes sense. The introduction it's a bit. I don't want to say that it's a bit too perfect, but do you know what I mean by that? Like, it's a bit like, yes, you're saying everything I want you to say, but I still don't know anything about you. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's not what I want from a person. I want you to say everything I want to say, but I also want to know, do you know what, this is what she is, and this is what makes her different to the 1,000 other applicants whose personal statements I've read. I think so that have that in the back of your mind throughout is, do you know what, am I selling myself here rather than am I just selling a dentistry degree? Like the whole purpose of a personal statement and any purpose of your application for dental school is you're technically selling yourself, aren't you, to the dental school? Like, pick me, what makes me stand out, and keep that in the back of your mind when you put these points in. And I think, but as a second draft, I think it's really good. It's definitely the right direction towards. I can imagine it being really good come October the 15th, I think it is.
Yeah. So what I'd say as well is message Ish on the Dental Portal, find out about the blog post, so that you can really nail down that structure. Have you got any questions from?
I was going to say, is it useful to put in what you're going to do? Because I'm still planning to go to Kenya to like visit like dentists and whatever there, but that's going to be in summer. That's going to be after my interview. So is it still worth mentioning or not really?
So I did something very similar. So I went to Cambodia and South Asia to do some voluntary work, and I kind of just name dropped it a bit like cheekily right in my conclusion. I was like, or just the penultimate paragraph, literally for like a few words, I just said, this summer I'll be, I think it was something like, this summer I'll be traveling to Cambodia to get involved in a program to help those less fortunate than I, or something along the lines, but obviously relevant to whatever you're going to be doing in Kenya. What I think it does is, one, it makes you look a bit different, because you can't really go into detail with it because you've not done it yet. But it does, like, if you just slip it in, you know how we've talked about stuff that you can take out. I would take them things out and put that in instead, because that's actually making your application stand up a bit higher. If anything, even if they read that and do, what, she's not even done that yet, who cares? It's definitely something to talk about at interview, worst case, because if somebody reads a personal statement and just reads like a random country, Kenya, it's a talking point, isn't it? And it's a talking point that's only going to make your application look better and look worse. So in that case, if you have the spare words for it, I'll just put it in right at the bottom somewhere. I think you definitely have room for it as well, because we've talked about parts of your personal statement that we can get rid of a lot of like stuff that really just you don't need to be there. And this actually adds a bit more value. So I would kind of just name drop it, maybe talk about like the skills you're going to develop doing it, something like that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, I don't think.
Well, thank you for being brave enough to share your personal statement and allow us to go through it. But yeah, as a second personal statement, very good. And by the time you get to later versions, I'm sure it's going to be a very strong personal statement. So along the right lines, along the right tracks, and by October, it should be in a good place. So guys, make sure to subscribe and tune into the next episode, where we're going to now be doing a little mini interview of Sana and her personal statement.